Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. President Holden and members of the board, Superintendent Graydon, and administrators, Principal Helber, teachers, friends, parents, relatives, and most importantly, the Saline High School class of 2014. It's a privilege to deliver your commencement address today, and I hope you find my words useful. It was about a year ago that your president, Grant Vlahopoulos, gave me a call and asked me to deliver the address. I was honored at the time to accept, and I'm honored to stand in front of you today. So I've got a PhD in naval architecture. I wanted to walk you through a little bit of math to start out. So I'm 36 years old. If you divide that by 2, that's 18. So I graduated from high school the same year that you all were born. So I think that's interesting because I've never given a commencement speech before, and I may not deliver another one because I don't think I'll have that opportunity again. So I've chosen to organize my comments into 2 stories from my life. They're not particularly amazing or I guess even that interesting, but rather I want to cover several turning points in my life. In relating these stories, I've tried to focus on what was going through my mind as I made the decisions that resulted in these turning points. In so doing, I'll come up with 2 themes for this talk. The first is, trust your gut. And the second is, if you're going to go, go hard. So your pants are bloody, I told my swim buddy Jason. Your face is, he replied. Jason and I were students at a summer training program at the Naval Special Warfare Training Center in Coronado, California. I would find out the next morning from the center's commanding officer that I was ranked number 2 out of my class of 36. As I rose to attention and turned to leave, the commanding officer shook my hand and said he was looking forward to seeing me in the 235th Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL, or BUDS for short, class the next summer. For my first 3 years at Annapolis, that's all that I thought I wanted. Those years were a blur of countless push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, hundreds of early morning and late night runs. I taught myself how to swim competitively and over long distances in McDonough Hall, Lejeune Hall, the Severn River, and even the Chesapeake Bay. There were run, swim runs, monster mashes, and physical screenings of every imaginable description. My summers were full of parachute school, dive school, and now the 6-week-long mini-BUDS course in Coronado. All of this so that I could earn one of 16 coveted spots reserved for Annapolis graduates every year in BUDS classes. And eventually so I could serve my country in the way that I thought would fit my interests and skills best. But something didn't feel right as I left my exit interview. During those 6 weeks, I'd learned more about what it meant to be a SEAL through my first-hand interactions with the cadre of BUDS instructors. I learned more about their personalities and their personal lives, more about what drove them and what their priorities were. And generally, something just didn't feel right. There was discord between what I'd learned about this profession and what I knew about myself. At first, I felt lost. I'd given so much. Should I stay the course? If not, what new course should I follow? After all, in just 8 short months, I would need to make a final decision about what I would do in the Navy. At this time of uncertainty, I was introduced to a smaller and much less well-known group in the Navy known as Explosive Ordnance Disposal by 2 trusted members. After learning as much as I could about this new role, I made the decision to join this community and was commissioned as Special Operations Officer in May of 2000. It was impossible for me to know at the time that our nation would come under attack the next year, that we would go to war in 2 theaters, or that I would spend the next 6 years leading teams around the world countering what's been called the most prolific threat in modern warfare, the improvised explosive device. It was impossible for me to know that the woman I was engaged to marry would bless us with 8 amazing children over the next 15 years. And if you notice someone that was out of place with the teachers over there, my oldest daughter, Tennille, who's 12, has joined me on this trip, and I'm very proud of her in many ways. All I knew at the time is that something didn't feel right about the path that I was on, despite all my efforts and preparations. So here's a message. There's much uncertainty in your future. When faced with big decisions, gather as much information as you can from every source that you can in a timely manner. And then act decisively and devote yourself to your decision. But in this decision process, don't forget to test and listen to your gut. Once you make a decision, even though it may not be exactly right, if you listen to your gut, you can be comfortable sticking to it. So energy, what a paradox. It heats us, cools us, it moves us, lights us, educates us, entertains us. Energy has even enabled the emergence of nations. But it also chokes us, it coats us, angers us, separates us, segregates us, threatens us. And today we ask ourselves, could it even bring about the downfall of nations? Following my time in the Navy and a stint at graduate school, go blue, I decided that I wanted to pursue a career in energy exactly because of this paradox. In the ensuing 5 years, I would start a program at the U.S. Department of Energy in Washington, D.C. that aims to install wind turbines in the ocean. I would found a small business that largely worked with a leading European company to bring this offshore wind technology to the United States. And then 11 months ago, I landed at the world's largest publicly traded international energy company, ExxonMobil. When I was discussing my offer from Exxon in January of 2013, I was able to negotiate as a part of my acceptance a starting role as a member of the team responsible for progressing the corporation's interests in the Russian Arctic. As a very quick background, ExxonMobil's partnered in a series of joint ventures with the world's largest energy company, Russian national oil company Rosneft, in exploring 10 very large chunks of the seafloor in the Russian Arctic. Although the best current analysis estimates the amount of oil and gas contained in these blocks as matching or exceeding the largest discoveries to date, developing them will be challenging in every sense of the word. They're in one of the most remote regions of the world in an incredibly hostile natural environment. The risks of damaging the fragile ecosystem are tremendous. The technological challenges of living and operating in this environment cannot be overstated. In short, this was a very exciting and correspondingly interesting opportunity, and I couldn't wait to begin. Unfortunately, I had to wind down my business and oversee the preparations for my large family's move from Northern Virginia to Texas. Regardless, I was so enthusiastic and excited about this new role that I soon found myself spending all of my spare time researching the Russian oil and gas industry. I even purchased Rosetta Stone and began working on my Russian pronunciation and vocabulary. Now I'll take just a quick 30-second diversion and share with you a little story. As our family was transitioning from Virginia to Texas, we were living in a hotel room. Believe it or not, my wife and I and all of our kids in a hotel room. And I had this Rosetta Stone, and I was practicing. If you're familiar with this technology, it's based on your computer, and you pronounce these new words, and it tells you if you're pronouncing them wrong or right. And I was having a very difficult time with the very first word. So it's Здравствуйте, which is a greeting in Russian. And I had my headset on, and I was really trying hard and saying it again and analyzing all my things, never got them right, and finally got it right. So I took my headphones off and set them down and went to take a break, and I opened the door to the bedroom into the living area. And all of my children were sitting there with their ears against the door, and they all looked up at me and said, Здравствуйте. So when I reported to ExxonMobil in July of 2013, however, I was told that the Russian Arctic was not progressing as quickly as had once been thought, that I would instead be leading a profitability study of another region of the world. Almost without thinking, I stopped Rosetta Stoning and started learning as much about this new effort as possible. It wasn't until several months later, during a lunchtime conversation with another mentor of mine, this one a 35-year ExxonMobil employee, that I realized that there may have been some baiting and switching going on. I didn't care. I had a new task, and I was devoting myself entirely to it. In February of this year, I found out that it was good that I had attacked this new task with such fervor because it had come from the highest levels in the corporation. After briefing my results to the management, I was given a new assignment. I was going to get my chance to look after the corporation's interests in the Russian Arctic, but even better than that, I've been selected to lead the earliest stages of the first actual development in the region, the first well of which will be drilled in 3 short months. I'm sure you can see some limited similarities between these two stories, but I want to highlight a couple of points. First of all, we have to know our place. There's a time to question and argue and push back. Then there's a time not to do this. If you have a question about when is the time for each, I'll refer back to my points that I made about your gut. But more importantly, no matter what the inputs are that force you down a path, once you decide to go down that path, don't hold anything back. If you're going to go, you have to go hard. So in closing, I want to complete a little exercise with you. So in order to complete this exercise, we'll have to close our eyes. So everybody close your eyes. Think back over the past 4 years to when you've been the most challenged, to when you've persevered and come out on the other side. No matter how big or small, think back to when you've won or lost and feel that win or that loss deeply. Maybe it was a love, or a championship, or a final exam. Maybe it was a passionate argument, or maybe the making up afterwards with your mother or your father, a friend, sister, brother, neighbor, or I suppose maybe even your pet. Perhaps it was a bet, a double dog dare. Remember that feeling deep down inside you. You know what I'm talking about. It's palpable, it's tangible. At that moment, you're full. You have a wide awake buzzing in your ears. You're almost aware of each synapse firing, the breeze, the hum and crackle of the high voltage wires overhead, slowed down pulsating of a fluorescent bulb. Each individual face, each individual cough, every sense heightened and hyper aware. I challenge you to feel that moment when you're the most alive. Feel it again right now. And then strive to make as many moments in your life like that moment as possible. And remember, stick with your gut. If you're going to go, go hard. Thank you very much.